Have you ever wondered what truly happens when God intervenes quietly? So quietly that most people miss it, yet so powerfully that a life is never the same again? Today, we're stepping into one of those moments. A moment hidden behind simple choices, quiet prayers, and a kind of divine orchestration that only becomes clear when we look back and see how every thread was woven with purpose. Opening narrative rewritten. There are stories in the Bible that feel like earthquakes, moments when heaven seems to tear open and God speaks in thunder. But there are also gentler stories, stories where God moves like a soft breeze at dawn, stories where his presence is unmistakable, not because of the noise, but because of the quiet certainty that something holy is happening unseen. This story belongs to that second kind. Imagine the scene, a land where people live by routines carved over generations, where daily life moved with the rhythm of the rising sun and the settling dust. The world felt predictable, until suddenly it wasn't. It's in this ordinary world that God begins to work in extraordinary ways. Our journey begins in a season of uncertainty, the kind of season where people ask questions no one can answer. Why now? Why this? Why me? They look at the skies searching for signs, longing for clarity, hoping that God is still near. At the heart of this story stands a person who never sought greatness, never expected to be remembered, and certainly never imagined that their quiet faith would change the course of generations. They carried the same burdens we carry: fear, confusion, responsibility, and a longing to know if God still listens. Yet in their hands, God placed a role that only they could fulfill. And what unfolds is not simply an event, but revelation. The discovery that faith is rarely about having all the answers. It is about taking one step in the dark, trusting that the one who guides your feet sees what you cannot. Now, picture this individual, alone for a moment, separated from the noise of daily life. Perhaps it is a sleepless night when worries press heavily, or perhaps it is a quiet morning when the world is still just waking. They do not know it yet, but everything is about to shift. A divine appointment is already set. A message from heaven is already on its way. The story you're about to hear is a reminder that God often begins his greatest works long before anyone notices. While we are still asking questions, he is already preparing answers. While we hesitate, he sets things in motion. And while we wonder if he hears us at all, he is already writing a chapter of redemption that will outlive us. This opening moment, the moment before revelation, is sacred. It is a thin place where heaven brushes against earth, where the ordinary becomes a doorway to the extraordinary. And if you listen closely, you can almost hear the soft stirring of God's plan beginning to unfold. As we step deeper into this narrative, keep this thought in mind. Sometimes the greatest miracles begin in silence, and sometimes the smallest yes can reshape eternity. With that, let's walk into the next part of the story, where the ordinary is interrupted by the divine and the journey truly begins. This leads seamlessly into your body section, continuing the unfolding story or message. Body narrative. As we continue the journey, imagine, for a moment, the quiet unfolding of a day that seems ordinary from the outside, but is charged with meaning beneath the surface. The central figure of our story, this humble individual whose life is about to become a part of something far greater than they ever imagined, moves through familiar paths, unaware that heavenly footsteps are drawing near. They rise before the sun fully stretches across the horizon. The air is cool, the kind that still holds onto the silence of night. In the distance, the first signs of life stir: a shepherd leading his flock, a woman collecting water, the soft thump of footsteps on packed earth. Everything feels the same, but something in their heart senses a shift. It's faint, almost like a whisper brushing against their thoughts, but it is enough to make them pause, enough to make them wonder. They stop at the doorway of their dwelling, fingers lightly grazing the rough wood, eyes scanning the landscape. Perhaps they whisper a prayer, one of those simple, honest prayers that rise not from ritual but from longing, a prayer shaped by uncertainty, softened by hope. And in that small, quiet moment, heaven listens. What they do not know is that God has been weaving threads behind the scenes long before this morning dawned. Every fear, every step, every question is quietly aligned with a greater purpose. And now that purpose begins to draw itself into the open, The story shifts as they leave home and walk toward the edges of the village. Their pace is steady, deliberate. They carry responsibilities, tasks they must complete, people they must support. And yet, somewhere deep inside, they cannot shake the feeling that life, as they know it, is about to bend in a direction they never anticipated. There's a quiet weight in the air, the kind that precedes revelation. Picture the landscape around them as they walk. Rolling hills that seem unchanged across generations, olive trees twisting toward the sun, scattered stones warmed by the growing light. Birds weave patterns across the sky, their wings catching hints of gold. Everything around them breathes with the gentle assurance that creation itself is held by a faithful hand. And yet, this ordinary moment is a threshold, one step more, and the story slips from the realm of the expected into the divine. The person continues, unaware that an angel has already been sent, unaware that spiritual realms have been stirred, unaware that God, who has remained steady through every silent night, has chosen this very day to reveal his promise. The arrival is not announced by thunder or flame. It is not dramatic or overwhelming. It comes in a way consistent with how God often works, with precision, gentleness, and unmistakable purpose. In an instant, the thin veil between heaven and earth becomes nearly transparent. The figure notices a presence ahead, a figure whose appearance is simultaneously human and impossibly radiant. Their breath catches, their heartbeat stumbles, their mind fights between fear and awe. They take a step back, unsure if they should run or fall to their knees. But the messenger speaks, and the first words are words of peace, words that settle like soft rain on parched ground, words that calm the trembling within, words that reveal that God has not been distant. He has been preparing. The messenger speaks of a plan that involved them, not because they saw greatness, but because God saw their heart, a plan that will shape generations, turning the course of history on a hinge of courageous obedience. The message is clear, but its weight is staggering. They struggle to breathe, to understand, to believe. Why them? Why now? How could this be? The angel's words do not erase their questions, but they illuminate them. Light spreads into places once shadowed by fear. They begin to sense that God's choice is not rooted in their strength, but in His. Not in their perfection, but in His grace. God's story is always larger than the vessel He chooses, and yet He chooses with love, with intention, with deep knowledge of who they truly are. As the sun climbs, its light grows bolder, illuminating the exchange in warm gold. The person stands still, caught between the life they once knew and the life now placed before them. The invitation is clear. Step into the unknown with trust. Trust the one who sees all, who governs all, who loves without measure. And then comes a moment on which everything pivots. Their response. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is not the sort of answer history would expect to shape the future. But it does, because it comes not from certainty, but from faith. They breathe deeply. Their voice is soft but steady. Their eyes lift with a mixture of humility and determination. And they say yes. Yes to God's plan. Yes to the unknown. Yes to becoming a vessel for something eternal. With that simple, powerful assent, heaven moves. The angel departs as quietly as he came, leaving the world unchanged on the surface, yet forever transformed beneath it. Our central figure stands alone again, but they are not the same person who began this day. The air feels different. The world looks both familiar and newly illuminated. The promise now carried within them is invisible to the world, but unmistakable to their spirit. They understand that the path ahead will be filled with joy, heavy responsibility, moments of doubt, and moments of astonishing grace. And yet, they walk forward with courage. As they return home, they begin to notice small details that now feel touched by divine significance. The laughter of children playing, the warmth of sunlight across their arm, the scent of bread rising from a nearby hearth. Every ordinary moment now carries an extraordinary echo. God is in the midst of it all. The days that follow bring questions from others, challenges, and moments of deep reflection. The person finds themselves navigating the tension between what God has spoken and what others can understand. People judge what they can see, but God works in what is unseen. And this unseen work grows quietly, faithfully, beautifully inside them. They learn that obedience is not a single moment. It is a journey, It is choosing trust again and again, even when the path ahead is uncertain. And as they walk through their village, talk with neighbors, and fulfill their responsibilities, they carry the quiet miracle within them like a hidden light, guiding their steps and strengthening their resolve. Their story becomes one of waiting, listening, and holding on to God's promise, even when the world feels unchanged. Waiting is often the hardest part of faith, but it is also the place where God shapes character, deepens trust, and prepares hearts for what is to come. And as the weeks pass, something within them shifts, not just physically, but spiritually. They begin to understand the depth of what God has asked of them and the magnitude of what He is bringing into the world through them. Their courage grows, their patience deepens, their trust becomes unshakable. Yet, this is not a solitary journey. God brings people into their life to walk beside them, people who may not fully comprehend the divine plan, but who offer support, comfort, and companionship. Relationships become both a refuge and a challenge, as the person learns to balance divine calling with human connection. There are moments of joy, moments when the presence of God feels close, when the promise feels tangible, when hope rises like a sunrise breaking through long shadows. And there are moments of fear, moments when doubts whisper, when circumstances threaten to overwhelm, when the weight of the calling feels too heavy. But in every moment, God remains near. Through quiet nights and uncertain days, the person learns that faith is not about understanding every detail. It is about walking step by step with the one who does. It is about surrendering control and embracing trust. It is about believing that God's plan, no matter how unpredictable, is always rooted in His goodness. Their journey becomes a tapestry woven from courage, humility, and divine purpose. And as the story moves forward, it prepares us for the moment when what has been growing in silence will finally be revealed, a moment that will change not only their life, but the lives of countless generations. The path ahead is filled with wonder and hardship, but it is a path guided by God's steady hand. And as we move toward the closing chapter of this narrative, we step closer to understanding how this single act of faith opened the door to hope for the world. Conclusion narrative. And as the days continue their steady march forward, the quiet miracle entrusted to this humble life grows, not only within the body but within the soul. What began as a moment of divine interruption now becomes a rhythm, one shaped by trust, wonder, and a deepening awareness that God is nearer than the breath they draw. Every sunrise feels like a reminder of the promise, and every sunset leaves them reflecting on how profoundly their life has changed. There are moments when silence fills the room, long still pauses when worries try to rise. Am I truly capable of carrying what God has asked of me? They wonder. What if I fail? What if I am not strong enough? But in these moments, peace often settles like a warm cloak. It doesn't erase the questions. It simply stands beside them, whispering that God chose them not because they were ready, but because He would make them ready. And slowly, the person begins to see that faith is not the absence of fear. It is a courage to keep walking even when fear tries to speak louder than hope. Their journey is not without its struggles. Whispers in the village begin to form. People who do not know God's plan create their own ideas. Ideas that sting, that confuse, that challenge the heart. But through it all, they learn a truth that becomes a shelter. When God gives a calling, He also gives the strength to endure the misunderstanding that often comes before the revelation. Even so, God does not leave them to face the season alone. A companion, someone trustworthy and steady, enters this chapter of the story. Someone who listens, who believes, who walks beside them even without seeing the full picture. Through gentle conversations, shared responsibilities, and moments of honest vulnerability, they find comfort in knowing that God often sends human hands to carry divine burdens. Together, they navigate the landscape of faith, sometimes laughing at the unexpected joys, sometimes wiping away tears when the weight of uncertainty presses too strongly, always learning that love grows deepest in seasons of shared endurance. As the days grow longer, a sense of anticipation begins to bloom. Not anxiety, not fear, something deeper, something sacred. It is as if creation itself is preparing for a moment that will ripple through time. The wind feels different. The night sky seems to shimmer with purpose. Even the quiet rustling of leaves seems to echo a waiting expectancy. And then one day, when the air hangs heavy with promise, the journey shifts again. They feel it first not as pain, but as realization. A holy moment has arrived. The long-awaited promise is ready to enter the world. Their breath catches with both awe and humility. This is the moment every step has been leading toward, the moment whispered in prophecy, the moment heaven has waited to unveil. But before that moment fully unfolds, there is a stillness, a pause that feels like the world holding its breath. In that sacred silence, they remember every step that brought them here, the morning of confusion, the unexpected visitation, the trembling yes, the months of learning to trust the unseen, the companionship that became a lifeline, and the steady, patient work of God within them. They realized something profound. This story was never just about them. It was always about what God longed to bring into the world through them. Their role was not to understand everything, but to surrender, not to carry the world, but to carry the promise, not to be perfect, but to be willing. And in their willingness, the world is about to change. As night settles over the hills and the stars take their places like silent witnesses, a new chapter begins. The surroundings are modest, simple, nothing the world would consider important. But heaven sees something different. Heaven sees a moment when eternal hope steps into time, when prophecies long spoken finally breathe, when God's love, uncontainable and unending, takes on flesh. Light enters darkness. Hope enters history. God enters the world. And though the world sleeps unaware, a miracle unfolds, quiet, tender, world-shifting. For the person at the center of this story, there is no crown, no applause, no spotlight, only a holy sense of awe, only gratitude that God chose to work through someone so ordinary, only the awareness that life, from this moment forward, will never be the same. They look at the promise now cradled in their arms, understanding with breathtaking clarity that the silence of waiting has given birth to a new kind of joy, one that cannot be contained, one that spreads like dawn across the earth. And so, their journey continues. Not finished, but transformed. Not concluded, but expanded. A story once whispered between heaven and earth now becomes a song, carried through generations. As we leave their story for now, we are reminded of something powerful. God still works in quiet places. He still speaks into ordinary lives. He still brings light into dark seasons. And he still calls people, humble, uncertain, imperfect people, to carry his hope into the world. Perhaps that is the invitation this story leaves us with, to listen for his whisper, to trust his timing, and to say yes, even when the path is unclear. Because sometimes the greatest miracles begin not with thunder, but with a quiet yes that changes everything.